Welcome to the Next Chapter podcast. I am very excited to introduce my friend Annie today. And Annie and I met when I got involved with a company called Beauty Counter, which is all about educating others on how to make safer product choices for themselves and their family. Annie is a tremendous leader and was a great mentor and a real role model. So I'm excited to welcome her to the Next Chapter community. So welcome, Annie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited. Yay.
I am so excited. And Annie is also a mother of 4 children, a son and 3 daughters. And we can't forget about your cute dog, Rosie, that you constantly are posting about.
Who has been evacuated, so hopefully she will not be participating in the podcast. Crossing fingers.
Okay, good. But if she is, we are family friendly and it's all about just sharing our real life. And so today I'm excited to talk to you all about your journey and being that you are a mother of 4 children. I know that you have a lot on your plate, but you also do a great job at prioritizing yourself and your own needs and passions. So we will get into that during today's conversation. So I wanted to kind of go back to the very beginning of Annie and kind of describe yourself as a child and what you were totally passionate about as a child.
I love that question. I was just watching, there are no spoilers, but the latest Ted Lasso, and I love she looks in the mirror and she's, a grown woman, then she sees herself as a little girl, and it's such a good analogy. Yeah, I was always high energy, always outgoing, always friendly, built in my DNA for sure. But on the flip side of that, I cannot remember a time when I didn't read. Like I don't know what happened, but I could read before I went to school. So it was like, I've been doing it, I think, since I was like 3 or 4. And so having a book and having that like quiet place to escape to, or like imaginary world to escape to, has always been a big part of me. So it's funny, like I'm outgoing, but I also really like my quiet time. And always been blessed and lucky with good girlfriends my whole life. And like you have your family, but your friends also become your family. So I feel like that's always been a big part of it too. And always working. Like I was like babysitting when I was 10. I worked in an ice cream store. I worked at a camp. Like, and we can get into it. I think after I had my twins in 2001 was like the first time that I hadn't worked for a long time. And that was kind of like a strange feeling for me, but I've always been kind of like a worker bee, as part of my DNA too.
Which is very interesting. And I do ask that question because it's interesting to see the start of someone's journey and how that has kind of led them throughout their path. And also, it can be interesting for mothers who feel kind of stuck and to kind of go back to that childhood energy and recognizing what you were passionate about, or maybe what you dreamed of doing, and maybe you didn't do that yet, but that you can pull on that as well. And so it's interesting that for you, you've really carried, and we'll get into it, your love of reading and your energy and being around other people and community, and built something that you're totally passionate
always
about.
Curious. I mean, I was like one of those nerds that really did like school. Like I love to learn new things. Even now, like I like to go down the rabbit hole and like research things. And that's,
I think that's why we're good friends, because we both like to learn.
One other thing too is like I've always been curious. I love to learn new things. I was like one of those nerds that like I loved school. Like like a new topic. I love to go down the rabbit hole. I love to research, and it is one of those things I think I used to like beat myself up for. And the older I get, I'm like, it's actually kind of a good quality.
It's a great quality, and I think that that's definitely something that we have in common. And it's important to continue to be curious and to grow and to evolve. And I think where people again get stuck is that they're not willing to change. They're not willing to grow. They're not willing to evolve. And especially as an educator as well, I'm super passionate about continuing to learn. I mean, there's always something new. There's always a different way to look at something, and that's so important. So
and look at you doing this. I mean, they say I don't have the research at my fingertips, but beginner's mind is like good for you cognitively, good for your health. Like to just learn something new and be fresh, it definitely energizes me for sure.
Totally. So you were curious, energetic, and that's kind of your childhood. So take us back to the beginning of your professional journey and kind of highlighting some of the pivotal moments? I mean, you kind of touched on it briefly when your twins were born, but kind of highlighting those pivotal moments.
Well, it's funny. I'm back spending a lot of time or thinking about this part of my life because my oldest girls are twins. One has already graduated from college. The other is graduating on Friday. So, and, they're at that like pivotal point where you get your first job and, you move and you meet new work friends. So yeah, right out of college, I knew I wanted to, I'm from Long Island. I knew I wanted to get a job in New York City. And I was like, advertising, PR, publishing, anything. I was an English major. I was just like, I'll do whatever it takes. And I was really lucky. I ended up getting a job at an advertising agency. And it was like, completely administrative. But my boss was like, I can tell you're bright. Like, well, I'll, put you in and help, have you help where you can. And if you can do a good job here, like any entry level job with the basics, we'll promote you. And, I was telling my girls, she was the best boss. Like I would follow her anywhere. She was so good to me. She was so kind. She was so smart, so good with people. And I feel like, not only was the agency great and I got to work on, Planters Nuts and Fleischmann's Margarine and all these great packaged goods brands, but the people that I worked with, I'm still really close with a lot of them. And she was just such a great female mentor. So I did that for a while and then got married. And it was like the very tippy beginning of .com web type stuff. And again, I was like, I'm kind of curious about this. So I switched over to work at a digital ad agency on Delta Airlines. Which was great. So I learned, I always say like I'm techie, like I know a little bit about tech, like enough to be dangerous web stuff and help them build their website. But, I was flying to Atlanta. I was in Atlanta at least 2 or 3 days every week. So that sort of was, as much as I love to travel, it wasn't fun travel. So around that time I got pregnant and with my twins and ended up on bed rest. And I knew I couldn't keep up with the pace of traveling. So, and then I had them and they were preemies and obviously they're all okay now because they're graduating college, but it was sort of like a wild time and 9/11 happened. They were born August 31st, 2001 and then 9/11 happened.
Wow.
So for those of us that remember, I mean, it was just such a come to Jesus moment of like, what is happening? What is going on? I'm like, I can't leave them. I can't commute. I can't. So I just sort of like invested that time in being home. And I had 4 kids in 4 years. So I had my son 2 years later. I was like, if I'm going to be a mom, I'm going to be we're going.
You're just going to do it. Go for it.
I was in it, and then I had my daughter 2 years later. She was kind of a now or never. So it was sort of my super mom phase. And I wouldn't change a thing. I mean, it was so much fun, but I do think, as I was saying, like I was kind of like, wow, I went from having this pretty high flying career, a lot going on, always busy, to like, okay, today we're like getting up and making muffins and going to the park. It was just sort of like, it took me a moment to feel like, where am I in all of this? And I was so blessed and lucky. My parents are close and my in-laws are close. We had so many people in their lives, but still I don't know if I really felt the most me at that, which, I mean, even if you're working or just having kids, I think it's a phase of your life where it's very transitional. So, and I
appreciate that you mentioned that, that you really didn't feel like this was me. And that is something that I 100% work on my clients. And at any point, you can feel that that you've lost yourself, that while you are a mother, you kind of forget that you're also an individual and that you're a human and that you have other needs. And so it was very interesting that you kind of pointed that pivotal point.
Like a lot of other women, I think too, like, how can I feel this way? I'm so lucky to be home, that we were able to juggle financially and, everything, that I could be home. It was sort of this best case scenario, but I wasn't totally like, oh, I don't know. And I've always been good. I'm a runner. I love to play tennis. So like, I feel like at that point in my life, that was sort of my, my thing that I did for myself, but it's still sort of, I think intellectually wasn't necessarily checking the box, even though, I was getting 45 minutes alone to go out for a run if I could, but it wasn't totally the same.
Right. So it sounds like there was that guilt a little bit that I sensed that, yes, wow, I'm so lucky that I can do this, that, financially we can swing this, that I have these beautiful children, that I'm able to be home with them. But there is that intellectual piece, especially coming from, like you mentioned, that high profile job, and that you're curious. So then you mentioned that you, that you were working out and using that, but how did you find or fulfill that intellectual piece when your kids were younger?
I mean, I definitely was still reading, not at the pace now. I mean, I just didn't have the time, but like, I would read myself to sleep every night. And I do think that was a good escape. And I have to say, like, I have 2 best friends that I think I met them my girls were 1 maybe, and they were really my outlet and my lifeline. I mean, it wasn't necessarily, I mean, I guess it was mental health really, not necessarily intellectually, but at least I had somebody that I could lean on that was going through it as support. I mean, and we're still to this day really good friends, but I think that was a bit of a lifeline. But I do think reading saved me, and I think like the World Wide Web and all that was just emerging. Like I remember for a while I didn't even have a computer because I had my work computer and then I had to give it back. You know, I think we had like a gateway computer, so it wasn't. I mean, that's a mixed blessing, I think, but it wasn't even like
you could communicate with people that weren't easily
really
right in your backyard.
Yeah, or even like research stuff. You know, like it just was sort of like we went to the library and that's where you found stuff. So it was sort of like a quiet time in that way. But I do think if I could have been more plugged in, maybe it would have been a little bit easier for me and probably easier to work too, you know?
Right. Because there wasn't that remote or work at home option for women. So that's interesting to point out as well. And then also I wanted to highlight how you mentioned the support system. So while you also, when their kids were little, you said you had family and friends, and that is important too, to find some kind of community. And I know that you are great at that. So you said you have your friends, and we're going to get into it a little bit later in the conversation, how you've built this community of readers, the beauty counter community, how you and I initially met. That community and support systems are really important to you.
It's huge too. And I always remember looking back, like when I talk to, you know, like young moms now that my kids babysit for and stuff, like I remember agonizing over getting a babysitter. I mean, maybe it was like 4 to 6 hours a week that I was going to pay. That wasn't my mom, that wasn't family, you know, and I was just like, you know, my mom was still working at the time. And, you know, somebody wasn't like I was getting a babysitter to go to this spot, even if I was, who cared? But, you know, like I agonized over that so much. And like my advice now is always like, get the help that you need. It's such a short window. Like it's such a short window. And like, honestly, most of the time I had her, I was like taking another kid to a doctor's appointment or going to Target without 4 kids. You know, it's like, I think as women, sometimes we just beat ourselves up or feel like we need to do it all. I just recently heard the saying martyr mom. It's like, I was like being a martyr mom.
Interesting.
Yeah. You know, at what cost?
That's very important. A do it all or a martyr mom. I like that. Or recognizing that asking for the support, for the help is not saying that you can't do it. Everybody can do something and is capable, but nobody is capable of doing it all at the same time.
No way. And like, were the other kids happier if they were like sitting in the doctor's office with the one that had the appointment? No, they would have been happier home with the babysitter at the park, you know, but I think I just had it so ingrained in me, and that, you know, that was a big lesson that I've learned.
That's important to point out to people. Again, it goes back to the whole support. And so you had these children, and then you were at home with them. And how long did that kind of period last, or then what kind of happened?
Yeah, as my youngest, I'm trying to think, she must have been around 4. She went to like a longer preschool till like 1 o'clock, and that's actually the first kind of move I really made for myself. As I started playing tennis, like I was going to be in Wimbledon or the U.S. Open. I mean, like 3 teams, the whole thing. I was like, it just felt like something I could do that was flexible. And tennis is such an intellectual game, so it was like community, brain power, exercise. So I started doing that. But even that, I was like, I don't know when she goes to kindergarten if this is what I really see myself doing, because that was going to be the first time I really had like, I guess like a 7-hour chunk. So at that time, like blogging was sort of starting to be a thing. And I've always loved to write too. So I think I had a blog for a while, like a style blog. And then it was like very, very early in the, I hate the word influencing, but kind of that day. So I could see like if I posted about stuff people were buying, and I was like, interesting. You know, the little girl that always liked her babysitting money was like, okay, this is kind of fun. So I started doing a little bit of like fashion wholesaling with accessories, very small level. And then I connected with this amazing company, which to this day, if you need a bathing suit, Cabana Life is the place to go. Female founded. And I had hosted a trunk show for them. And they were like, we sold like whatever. It was a great show. So I sort of started to partner with them on stuff. So I got a little flavor of like, okay, I like that this is something I can do. It's something that I'm interested in personally. It's flexible. I'm still home for the kids. So I was sort of doing that like very small level. And then one of my friends from college knew Catherine Type, who knew Greg Brentfrew, and was like, you've got to hear about this company named Beauty Counter. I was like, I'm so good. I have my own thing going on here. I'm really good. But I always tell my kids, take the call because you never know.
Right.
Right. And I have my initial email that was like, not thanks, I'm good. But, I ended up talking to Catherine and heard about Beauty Counter. And that really, I always say, was like the perfect storm for me, because as much as I love clothes and stuff, I'm also somebody that's like, I'm a tree hugger. I've always wanted to save the world. Like, I very much, like, that's one of my values, is I want to make a difference. And with Beauty Counter, educating on the kind of changes that you can make that can impact your health and your family's health, like, it was sort of that perfect storm of, this is flexible, this is something I can make money on, this is something I really believe in, like really passionate in. So I started beauty countering very, very small. I still had my blog. I was still, I didn't like drop you hear about some of these women that like drop everything. And, it was a very gradual sort of ease in. And I loved it. I mean, it was sweet, the best team. I met the best women. I learned so much. I mean, one of my regrets is that I didn't get an MBA. And now I really don't have that regret anymore, because I always say doing Beauty Counter was like getting an MBA. I learned so much about running a business without having to go to school again and having to pay for it. I was getting paid.
Exactly.
So, it allowed me to do it, like tap into that entrepreneurial side, my intellectual spirit, the community there, the finest people I've ever met. And I was still home to get my kids off at the bus and run around with them like a maniac. And at one point when I was really in my glory days, I had 100% replaced the salary I would have made if I'd stayed in advertising and marketing, and I wasn't paying for a nanny or anything. So, the financial impact on our family was real. And I was able to, we live in a great town with a great school district, but I always wanted my kids to go to private school. And my husband was like, if you can pay for it, we could do it. And I was able to put all 4 of them through, private middle school and high school. So it had a real impact on our family and was great for so many reasons.
That's huge. And I wanted to point out a couple of things that I think are important in highlighting. One is how you reconnected with your values, that you had said that, you were always like a tree hugger, and that a mission was very important to you. And at the beginning, while you were blogging and you were working for this other company, it worked because, again, it connected with your values of being home with your kids and something flexible. But that mission-driven piece was a value that was, it sounds like, not really being fulfilled by your maybe professional career.
Definitely.
And that you were able to recognize that and then kind of take that call and make that pivot. And I think that it's important to recognize that at any point we have like these core values, and when one of them kind of feels off balance, it can cause some friction within ourselves. And that if women or mothers at any point feel kind of that friction, one of the first points that I tell my clients is to check in with your core values and see, what are my core values? What is being honored right now and what isn't? And what can I do to continue to honor that one that, may not be in balance?
Yeah, I agree. And I was very lucky with Beauty Counter that I sort of found that sweet spot. But, I have plenty of friends that do a job that they're fine with. It's just a job, but it allows them, the income from that allows them to then explore whatever their passion is or their charity. Or so sometimes they don't always align, but one can get you to the other.
And that, again, that's very interesting to point out too, that when you're searching for your purpose or for your passion, that sometimes, yes, you mentioned that it does align where it is the kind of the job that you're doing, where it has, that financial impact and all of that. But for other people, it might be outside of that. And that is something to keep in mind, that one doesn't have to be interconnected, because that's a lot of pressure to be able to find something that is totally intertwined.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have a lot of friends. I keep saying I just turned 50. I turned 50 in December, which is not just, but and I have a lot that are kind of at this point, and they're like, I don't even know what my passion is. Like, I was always kind of lucky. Like, reading has just always been my North Star, that it's been my thing, and they give it, and even just taking the time to explore that, figure out like what does light you up. Like, when you look at somebody else, what are you envious that they're doing? I mean, sometimes you don't even know what it is that you want.
Right. And that's the work that I do with my clients, is that people don't know anymore. And that what worked for you at one point in your life may not work for you now. And that's okay. That's not that you are, I hate to use the word failure, but that's just the word that's coming to my mind, or that what you did in the past doesn't matter. Just things change. There's life events. There are social events. There are things that happen in the world that can cause us to pivot. And so I guess that kind of brings me to where you are now, because I know that COVID had a huge impact on a lot of
Yes.
people, and it gave people the time to kind of pause and slow down. It forced us all to slow down and really sit with ourselves, even if we liked it or not. We could continue to surf the internet safely, but beyond that, it left us all with a lot of time to really think, what does purpose and passion look like for us? So
For sure. And that's definitely my story. During COVID, I had everybody back home, which it was, a blessing and a curse, and it really gave me the time to think about what I was doing. And something in me was like, I just don't know if Beautycounter is my last stop. Like, I'm great. I mean, I'm still doing it and I'm still active, but I just was like, I think I have one more project. And I think I could see a little bit down the road that my time frame was about to open up. I mean, right now I have like one 17-year-old who's home. She's basically feral. She takes care of herself. I was going to have more time than ever. Yeah. Like, what are you going to do with that time? And like, sometimes I wish I could be one of those women that likes to go to the country club and lunch and play golf, because that is such a good way to spend time, but it's just never been my thing. So, and at that point I was reading even more because of COVID, and I was really, saw what a lifeline it was for me to be able to escape where I was, read a book and be where, in Germany or wherever. So and I was doing a coaching program at the time, and they were really having us explore, what do you love? What do you like? What lights you up? Like, take money off the table, take everything. And it just really got me thinking about it. And I also saw during COVID, I always knew the power of community, but I was like, oh, it can be virtual. Like, I mean, I have dear friends that I have never met in real life, never hugged. But so it sort of started to click. And it's funny because my original idea was like, maybe I'll do a book subscription type thing with some kind of virtual component. So you get the book and maybe some tchotchkes and goodies, and then you get on Zoom and there's a speaker or something. And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, I hate going to the post office. I don't want to ship stuff. I don't think I want to be in a business where I have to ship stuff. And I was just talking to a friend, and sometimes, I'm sure you see this, but like, you need somebody else to be your mirror. And she's like, you are so good at community. Like, why don't you try to build something? And it took me a while to kind of get over it, because I was like, well, there's Reese has a book club and Oprah has a book club, and but so what? Nobody's going to do it the way you're going to do it. And
exactly.
Yeah,
that is huge. Yep.
I had to kind of like go through that, and I just started to build it, and it's been 2 years. It's again been another huge learning experience. I've learned so much. I mean, I had a great foundation from Beautycounter on how to build a business, but doing it on your own is a whole different thing. But basically what it is, it's a virtual book club. We have women all over the US that are in it. And we have a website and an app. And then when we read a book every month, and we usually have a speaker, 1 to 2 speakers every month that can be related to the book, unrelated to the book. And it's been so much fun. I mean, even just like, we, not every month, but a lot of months we have authors come join us. So being able to connect with authors is just like, I mean, I fangirl like crazy. It is like my happy place. Like, authors, I think if you get to the point where you've had a book published, like, I don't know, you just can't be a jerk anymore. Like, you're so much putting your heart on your sleeve that they are like the coolest people. So, I love connecting with women that love to read. And really this last push, the last couple of months, what I've really been focused on, which I think will connect with your people, is like lapsed readers or women that want to read more, bring it back to their lives, or just are like, I can't spend another minute on my phone, like, help. So I feel like, my original people in the group, I call them my rock star readers. They were the people like me that were reading, 5 books a month, easy, whatever. Like, they're like my truths. But I'm really, really intrigued with this sort of new crop of people that want to bring reading back into their lives and want to connect. And it's been so much fun to see people go from like, I wasn't reading at all, to like, I'm regularly reading 1 to 2 books a month. Like, that to me, huge success.
Well, that was me. I always read, or I'm a huge audiobook listener. Try to tell people, don't fully multitask, because you can divert your attention and all of that. However, for me, listening to a book when I am driving, that to me is healthy multitasking. Or when you're doing mundane tasks. I can't stand folding laundry. I can't take ownership for it because my husband, I'm very lucky, he does that. But just anything that you can kind of couple with it, I I did, but I never really got involved in the book clubs because I was slightly intimidated because I wasn't sitting down with the actual book. Sometimes they weren't even available. Now so many books are available on audiobook, but in full disclosure, in preparation for our conversation, I wanted to check out to see what your community was all about. And so I did your little trial, and we read a short story, and I was just so energized. I think I was looking for, again, that outlet, that community of other people. And then after that, I joined fully. And I am now in the second month. And because I loved it so much, I actually had my mother join as well. We live in different states. And so this was something, again, that we could do together. I talk to her multiple times a day, but it's always about, with the kids, just little stuff. And this brought us that intellectual piece and something that we were excited to be able to do together. So I applaud you for creating this really special community.
Well, thank you. And that was another thing too, I sort of had to grapple with. Like, I feel like so many people are like in a neighborhood book club, but this is very different. Like we are going to talk about the book. We are 100% going to talk about the book. And I think it's easier to stay on whatever. We can, go off topic, but if that's what we have in common for the most part, is we're there to talk about the book. Whereas like your neighborhood book club, it's like, because we all live on the same block, and I've been guilty of it too, but you end up gossiping about this one and who said what at the bus stop. Like this is not that crew at all. And I think because we're all there for that reason, it's really easier to stay on task and talk about the book. And I always say, even if you haven't read the book or finished the book, please still come, because books are a launching pad in most cases to talk about other issues. So, you can read a book about a girl in college, but you'll end up talking about relationships or debt. It's like we're going to go on the deeper topic. And I think that's where connecting over books is so great, because there is like little to no small talk. You get right into it.
You definitely get right into it. And what is so special about your community also is, again, I love to learn. So there's that learning component. So there's the book that, you spend so much time curating a great book for each month, but also I just love the additional speakers.
Yeah.
So that really is super special, because it makes it unique. There's that community aspect, but then there's also that almost like lunch and learn component that you can pop on, learn something with these women that you have something in common with beyond the book, but also get this lunch and learn component. So that is huge.
And it taps into like, I'm insatiably curious. So I'm always like, well, who do I want to? Like, we're going to have an astrologist next week.
I can't wait.
A friend of mine that works in publishing, so that at Real Simple Magazine, she's the books editor. So it varies from month to month. In the beginning, I was very strict about like, somehow the speaker has to tie to the theme of the book. And the longer I've got, I'm like, if it's someone interesting and they can do it, let's do it. If it ties to the book, if not. Also, too, it gives people some grace, because listen, not every month are you going to be able to read the book in time for the discussion. But if you still want to plug into the community, you can hop on the speaker and catch that. And everything too, I love, because everybody in the group, I hate the word busy, but everybody is legit busy. Everything is recorded on Zoom. So if you can't get on live, you can still participate and tap in.
Yeah, that's huge. And we spoke about time. So I want to go back a little bit and talk about what time kind of means to you, because again, you are passionate, you're building this great business, you have 4 kids, you have that super cute dog, Rosie. I know you say that she's naughty sometimes. If you were to look at your, Instagram feed, you're reading a million books, you attend church, you go to the beach, you went to the Taylor Swift concert, Now I understand, not you, but just I want to preface that someone's life on social media is curated, but let's talk about the real, and you work out. So let's talk about the real Annie and how you handle time, because that is, I think, something that is daunting for people, not only just to read, but just time for yourself and what's important.
For sure. It's a great question, because I almost feel like you prioritize, or you can prioritize what's important to you? And it's interesting talking about reading because I do hear that. And yes, I'm a very fast reader. It's important to me. I make time for it. Like I'm sort of a unicorn. But I'm like, people are like, how do you make time to read? I'm like, really? Because I see you posting about what you're watching on Netflix. Like, and then I'm not a zealot. I'm not one or the other. I love my TV. But it's like if you can chip away at that little bit of that time, you can find the time. I'm one of those people too, like I can actually do more if I check the boxes for the things that make me happy. Like I worked out, I have a busy day today. I made it to Orange Theory this morning because I know it was like the highlight of my day. And from there, I'm going to feel more energized. So I think, slotting in the things that are important to you will make you feel more time abundant. They'll make you feel like you have to do more. And at the end of the day, I've just always been one of those people. It's a sweet spot for me. Like I can look at my day and be like, okay, here's what needs to be done and here's what can go to tomorrow. So sometimes you have to triage. Sometimes you can't do it all in one day. So what's really urgent, what's really got to get done today, because either it has to be or you want to do it, and then what can you slide over? My lesson, I would say, even since COVID, is really like, and maybe it's the same with a lot of your listeners, like I can do it all. Like I really can, but like at what cost? So like maybe it's a day I don't feel great. So don't go work out, go for a walk. I think I'm very much recovering. Like I have to work out and I have to, do all these, cross off the to-do list. And what is that really success always? Like sometimes you do all that and you can accomplish everything and then you're miserable. So giving myself the grace to be like, here's what's got to be done. And here's what can wait has been a big lesson for me.
That is important to recognize too, and to prioritize. And it sounds like you're really intentional about what you make time for. And speaking of that though, because do you actually have like a list of the things that are like your non-negotiable kind of things that you want to make sure in any given day, week, month that you slot in?
I mean, I am intentional. I mean, listen, it doesn't always go the way I want it. And that, I would say, when my kids were younger, that was my real life lesson of being like, okay, this is not how I thought it was going to be. But yeah, I mean, in my ideal day, the best day, I'm like reading for 30 to 45 minutes before anybody else is up in my house. And I mean, I don't think I can even fall asleep anymore without reading before I go to bed. So those are sort of like the benchmarks of my day. And moving my body, whether it's, like I said, taking the dog for a walk, if it's a day that's where it's not happening, to, I mean, I'm not doing it anymore, but last year I ran a half marathon. The training was really fun. So trying to fit that in are sort of the non-negotiables. And when my kids are home, like they really are my focus. They're not always home. So I feel like when they are around, I really want to try to make time for them and whatever they're doing. I think too, I came from having I had to be so focused when my kids were younger, because I really had the 8 to 3 when they were in school was kind of my time. And I in some ways it made it easier, because now that they're older, I have a longer window. So, and I don't have that structure. So it's like, I can kind of do whatever. And it's been the last 2 years, it's been interesting to learn to have boundaries and say no to things just because I want to. Like, I don't really want to do that. So I'm going to say no, not because I can't, because I have to, carpool and drive. And it's just not really what I want to do, which is harder in some ways.
Yeah, saying no and setting those boundaries is really hard, because people think the word no is like a negative, but it's really, you're protecting yourself. You're saying no because you want to do something different with that time. And there's a finite time, 24 hours, and how you choose to use that is important. And that's interesting when you have the structure. For some people, having that structure and that, school hours, and you got to fit it all in, can be helpful. Or for some, it can be, you just kind of waste away the time. Or when you have this like full 24 hours to yourself, and then how do you fill it? So it's interesting how everyone handles it differently.
Yeah. And I think too, like I said, I'm like an ambivert. So like, I really do. Sometimes I would really rather be home reading a book, and sometimes it's hard to say, like when it's social stuff, but I think Oprah said, or someone said, you just have to say, no, I can't. Like, you don't always have to give a reason. And sometimes I'm just like, no, I can't make it. I hope you guys have the best time, and in my head, I'm like, I'm going to be so happy being under the covers with my book, but that's me. Like I have to lean into that.
100%. And that is important. When you said that you started the conversation like, this is me, and you have to continue to check in with yourself and understand that at the end of the day, the only person that you're responsible for is yourself. And then obviously your like immediate family members, but you can only control yourself. As much as we've tried our whole lives to control the kids, we try, and we try to steer them and guide them in all of this. Realistically, the only person you can control is yourself and your own happiness. And so creating those boundaries and being intentional with the time and all of that is so important. And so I guess I'll kind of, as we kind of get towards the end of our conversation, I wanted to ask two more questions. The first was what does fulfillment or being like or purpose and passion mean kind of to you? Because it's changed throughout.
So that's a good question. I have to say, especially with all these graduations with my kids, I have to say, like, watching my older daughters, like, I mean, they're basically like grown and flown. There is some fulfillment there. I mean, the days were long and hard, and don't get me wrong, and middle schoolers and high school kids can be awful, but there is something of like, it's not me, but it's like a part of me that I'm like, and it's not done yet, but like, it feels good that they're going to be fully functioning adults, like out in the world, even though I still kind of sometimes want them home. I'm like, that's success. This is what we wanted. This is what we wanted. Right. And I have to say too, related to that with the book club, I mean, it is like, there are some days I'm like, I am throwing in the towel. This is too hard. But like, but then there are those lows, but then the highs are that much higher. Like, I think, I don't know, if you're one of those people that just has a charmed life and everything is easy, maybe you don't appreciate it as much. I don't know. I'm not one of those people, but it's like when you put in the time and, an author shouts you out, or, somebody is like, this is how my life has changed, or I met these great people. It's like, it's a fulfillment I think you can't appreciate unless you really have those moments where it's challenging.
And I appreciate that because no path is easy. There's going to be detours, and I like to meet the person that thinks everything is all perfect, because really inside them they're holding on to something, because at any given moment there's things that you can't control. And I also think that it's interesting. I asked that because the fulfillment piece, it came in multiple ways for you. So it was your own, business that you're building and the community that you're building. But then also there was that fulfillment and excitement watching your children grow. And that, that's important for people to, again, understand that you can feel that fulfillment and purpose and passion in different parts of your life. You can have them at the same time, and at other times, you might be feeling it in one area and not the other, and that's okay.
Definitely.
But the key is to try to find something that lights you up. Everyone deserves to shine. Everyone deserves to, take control of their happiness. So
yeah, I mean, sometimes I think too, like back to the martyr mom, I'm like, what do I want my kids to model? Like, do I want them to be like that? And I'm like, no, I want them. I mean, I want them to have a family and be fulfilled, but I also want them to do something, whether it's work or a passion or something that makes them happy just for them. And I think it's easy to be like, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to check it off. But it's like, think about how you want your kids to be. That's what they need to see at home.
That's huge. The modeling piece for sure. Any parting wisdom, last, kind of words that you would like to leave the listeners with as they go out to find their own purpose and passion and time to read or time to do whatever is important to them?
I mean, I just think if you have a gem of an idea, like whatever it is, at least explore it. At least tell your best friend, tell your husband, there are these people around that want to support you. And, there are people that say it's crazy, but I feel like so many women sort of like poo-poo it, or, they'll be like, oh, it's just a hobby, when they're like really running this small cottage business. Not that you have to turn something into $1 billion business for it to be a success, but, if there's something you're interested in, whether it's going back to school or taking a class or starting a business, or, I just see so many women making themselves small. And like I said, I'm 50, so I feel like it's more our age. I look at my daughters and I don't see that. And that makes me very hopeful for the future. But, I feel like if you're in that like 40s to 50s, like we're not dead yet, for goodness sake.
For sure.
Getting started. This is the back half and the best half, so, get like, I don't know, like just check it out. Just see what it feels like. Just explore it. And you have time to read is my other thing I will say.
100%. You definitely have time to read and be a part of some kind of community.
Yeah.
And like you said, get curious. And you never know. Take that call, take that email.
Yes.
And you never know where it will go, because we all have time And we all deserve to, like you said, shine and feel good about something for yourself. And that
100%.
is the key. You know,
100%.
we give as mothers, give, but make sure that we give back to ourselves.
For sure. 10 minutes a day of reading counts. That's success to me. So.
Yes, I think quality over quantity too. I think that gets daunting too. You have this big stack of a book and you think, oh, you know, there's some super readers and they're getting through these books, you know, on a quick pace. But yes, that little nuggets of time, take advantage of that for things.
They add up. And read what you like. Like, you don't have to read War and Peace. This isn't college. You don't I don't care if you're reading a smutty romance. Like, if it makes you happy, that's what you should be reading. Fantasy. A lot of people, adults read children's books. It's something relaxing, nostalgic.
Totally. That's what I used to do. That's what I joked with my friends when they wanted me to be in a book club. And I was teaching elementary, 3rd and 4th grade. And I had to read the books that my students were reading. They were all reading different books. We didn't have like an anthology. They each had their own book bags. And so I was teasing with my friends. I said, well, if you want me to be in a book club and I have the time to do it, then let's read a Judy Blume. Let's read The Giver. Let's read, I don't know, it was Junie B. Jones or whatever the books were, or something, because there is, from an adult perspective, you can get something from it. It's a totally different conversation when you put a grown adult's perspective and life experience reading one of these books.
For sure. And summer is a great time to read, so do it now.
It is. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to prioritize the Next Chapter community. And I am so thrilled that you are part of my community that I'm building. And I appreciate all the information that you shared. Thank you so much, Annie.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
I appreciate it.